Today, I'm going to give you the only sales script you'll probably ever need to close any deal in any industry and really any price point. Now, most people think that sales is about having the perfect one liner or some magic phrase that gets everyone to say yes. But here's the truth: that exact mindset is why 87% of salespeople fail to hit their quota year after year, and founders are no different. What you actually need is a simple approach that works regardless of what you're selling. Because here's what I found after more than 500 founder coaching engagements: the best founders don't rely on scripts, they follow a psychological framework that guides every conversation towards a close. And in the next 25 minutes, I'm going to give you that exact 10-step framework. We'll cover how to build instant rapport, uncover pain that makes prospects beg you for your solution, handle any objection that may come your way, and close deals without feeling pushy or salesy. Now, why should you trust me? Well, I've personally generated over $10 million in sales across multiple industries, and the framework I'm about to share has been tested by hundreds of founders, really just like you, from complete beginners looking to land their first six-figure deal to seasoned pros and multi-time kind of veterans of this, doubling their close rates in 30 days. And I promise if you implement what I show you today, you will never struggle with sales ever again. Now, let's start at the beginning of any sales call. It's all about rapport building. And here's something that will change everything you think about building rapport. You see, I've found that most salespeople think rapport is about finding some kind of common ground between you and your prospect. Something like, oh, you went to Vanderbilt, I went there too. But the surface level connection actually hurts you and your credibility with the prospect. And here's why. When you try to bond over some sort of shared experience, you are positioning yourself as a peer. And people don't buy from peers, they buy from authorities who can solve real problems that they have in their business. And don't forget, I always say that prospects are scared when making a buying decision. We need to calmly but confidently guide them to the right buying decision. And real rapport is built on one thing: demonstrating that you understand their world better than they do. And now let me give you an example here. Instead of saying, oh, I see you're in the marketing space, I work in marketing too. What a coincidence. You say, hey, I noticed the last 3 LinkedIn posts you got under 100 engagements. And looking at your content calendar, you're really posting at kind of the worst possible time for B2B engagement. And that's probably costing you like 60% of your potential reach. Do you see the difference here? The first approach makes you like a buddy they'd want to go have a beer with on Friday night. But the second approach makes you an expert that they need to listen to. And here's the framework to use. I like to lead with an observation that proves that I understand them and their business, and then ask a question that makes them think about their situation differently. For example, hey, I noticed most companies your size are struggling with customer acquisition costs. They've doubled in the last 18 months. What's been your experience with that trend? And this really does 3 things. First, it shows that you understand their industry. Second, it introduces them to a problem they might not have fully kind of realized. And then third, it gets them talking about their pain points immediately, which is the whole point of discovery. And now the key here for me is tonality. I'm not coming across as cocky, I'm being consultative. Your voice should convey, hey, I've seen this pattern before and I am here to help. And it really positions you as a guide in their story, not another vendor trying to sell them something. Here's where most founders kind of completely lose the plot, in my experience. They ask surface level questions like, what challenges are you facing right now? And they wonder why prospects give them generic answers right back. But here's what the top 1% of founders understand: people don't buy solutions to problems that they can live with. They only buy solutions to problems that keep them awake at night. I'm sure you can relate. And our job as founders and as salespeople isn't to identify the pain, it's to elevate it, amplify it, make it so vivid that they can't ignore it anymore. Pick the scab, rub salt in the wound. And honestly, done right, your prospect may be a little pissed at the end of this process. And I call this the pain escalation method, and it works in 3 layers. Layer 1 is that service level pain. Start with the obvious business level kind of issue. Layer 2 is the consequence. Hey, what happens if this doesn't get solved? And then layer 3 is the personal kind of consequence, how this affects them as a human being. And here's how this might work in practice. Let's say you're talking to a CEO whose company is losing market share. You might start with a surface level question. Hey, tell me about your market position compared to 6 months ago. And they might say, hey, well, we've dropped from 15 to 12% market share. And an average founder would accept that and stop there, but not you, right? Don't move on yet. Let's go really deep here. Now let's get to the consequence level follow ups and say something like, hey, if this trend continues for another 6 months, what does that look like for the company? And now they're thinking, well, we'd be down to 8 or 9% market share. Our investors would panic and we might have to lay people off. Yikes, right? But you are still not done. This is where even very good founders and salespeople stop, but the real pain is personal. And so, on a personal level, I might ask something like, hey, how does that scenario affect you personally? What would that mean for your role as CEO? And this is where real emotion comes out. They might say, like, oh, honestly, I'd probably lose my job. And this is my first role as a CEO. I don't know if I can turn my career around after this. Now you have a problem worth solving and a pain that is very real that they recognize. And the key transition here is always tell me more about that. Use those exact words. Those 5 words will get people to reveal problems that they've probably never admitted out loud before. Remember, business problems become personal problems when they create stress, embarrassment, or threaten someone's livelihood. And our job is to help them kind of connect those dots. Okay, question time. Do you regularly discuss budget with prospects on the first call or even early in the call? Because this is the mistake that I see kill more deals faster than anything else. Founders either avoid talking about money entirely or they ask budget questions like they're apologizing for it for some reason. But here's what separates the pros from the amateurs. Budget isn't a barrier, it's a qualifier. The prospects who have money will tell you about it, and the prospects who don't have money will waste your time. I'm sure this has never happened to you. Your job is to figure out which one you're dealing with as fast as possible because your time as a founder is your most precious commodity. Please don't waste a second on poorly qualified prospects. Our goal as founders and salespeople should be to cut early and often on poorly qualified prospects. And I refer to this as budget Aikido. Instead of fighting against their reluctance to discuss money, I use their resistance to reveal the truth. And so here's how this works in practice. Instead of asking, hey, what's your budget, which may make people defensive, I anchor them with a range that's higher than my actual price. I might say something like, hey, typically when we solve this type of problem for companies your size, the investment ranges from $15,000 to $50,000, depending on the scope. Does that fall within the range you're expecting? And then one of 3 things will happen here. First, they'll say, oh my gosh, that's too high. I could never pay that much. And you know that they just don't have a budget. And you can either walk away or downsell to a lower price solution. Second, if they say, hey, that sounds reasonable, you know you've kind of hit the sweet spot on the lower end of your range. And then third, and this happens all the time, if they don't flinch at $50,000, you know you can go at the high end of that price range that you gave. And giving a range of prices gives you room to stretch your proposal based on the willingness to spend and the feedback they gave you. There's no rule that says every one of your customers has to pay the same amount for your solutions. But here's the thing about budget. People rarely tell you the truth on the first ask, in my experience. I always think I might need to ask the same kind of question 3 different ways. One is, hey, do you have budget allocated for solving this? This means, like, do they have any budget at all? And then number 2 would be, hey, what range were you thinking about for an investment like this? And then third would be, if we could show you a positive ROI of like 5 to 1 in the next 6 months, what would that be worth to your business? Each question here kind of attacks budget from a slightly different angle. And the third one is particularly powerful because it reframes cost as an investment and gets them thinking about value instead of price. And a last point here, if someone won't discuss budget with you after multiple attempts like this, I say something like, hey, I completely understand if budget is tight right now. Maybe we should reconnect in 6 months when you have more flexibility. Boom, mic drop. And this does 2 things here, right? It removes the pressure and creates urgency at the same time. A lot of times when you do this, you'll hear prospects say, whoa, hang on just a second. I'm interested. Let's see what kind of options we have. And suddenly they become more open to talk about budget, and you got them. Remember, people who are serious about solving problems are serious about discussing investments. They want to solve this problem. And if they won't talk about money, they're not serious buyers. Now, I want to take a little pause here to say if you want to make implementing this framework really foolproof in your business and on your next sales call, I've created a free sales planning worksheet that breaks down each of the steps into a simple kind of fill in the blank template. You can grab it a link in the link in the description below. It'll make your next sales call really feel like some kind of Jedi mind tricks in real life, just like Yoda. Okay, so in coaching more than 300 founders, this is, in my experience, where really good salespeople become excellent ones. You can have the perfect pain and the perfect budget, but if you're selling to the wrong person, you're just wasting everyone's time. The most common reason that I found that deals are lost isn't because of product or price. It's because you've lost before you even started, but you never identified the real decision maker. And this is tricky sometimes. You may be just talking to the wrong person and don't even know it. Most people think that authority is obvious. Oh, I'm talking to the CEO. They must make the decisions, right? What I've found is that after thousands of sales calls, there are always hidden influencers kind of lurking, right? The person with the fanciest title is not always the one who signs the check. And so I use what I call the authority sphere here to map out every stakeholder in a decision. So there's the economic buyer who controls the budget. There's the technical buyer, and this is the person that evaluates the solution from a technical perspective. There's the user, the person who's actually going to click the buttons and use your product. And there's the coach who is your advocate internally. Now, here's how to uncover this in your next sales call. You say something like, hey, walk me through exactly what happens after our call today. What is your internal process for making a decision like this? And they'll say something like, well, I need to present this to my team. Then we need buy in from our CTO. And ultimately, our CFO would need to approve budget. Okay, there we go. Now we have a real path to a closed deal. But here's the super ninja move. Instead of just accepting the process that they just laid out for you, you can optimize it a little bit. Say something like, hey, that makes total sense. In my experience, these decisions move fastest when all key stakeholders can ask their questions directly. Do you think it would make sense for us to do a group call next week with you, your CTO, and your CFO? And that way I can address everyone's concerns all at once instead of playing telephone. And this serves two purposes. First, it just speeds up the sales cycle, which is always good. And second, it prevents your message from getting diluted as it passes through multiple people. But what if you can't get access to all the decision makers? Well, then I need to turn my contact into an internal champion. And here's how I typically position this. Hey, I want to make sure you have everything you need to present this successfully to your team. What questions do you think your CTO might ask? And what about your CFO too? And then I help them prepare answers to those questions. I'm literally coaching them on how to sell my solution internally. And I might say, hey, when your CFO asks about ROI, here's a few key data points we've had from similar businesses to yours. And I'll give them the exact language to use here. And this does something really powerful is it makes them invested in your success. The more they help you navigate the organization, the more committed they become to you getting the deal done. Now, if you're selling to the enterprise, it's a slightly different game. In these complex B2B deals, I always push for a stakeholder meeting early. And here's the language I use. Hey, I found that when we have all the decision makers in one room, we can address everyone's concern really in real time and usually wrap up the decision making process in a single meeting. Would that be valuable to you as well? And this reframes the meeting from being for their benefit and not really for ours. And it is, right? Like they get faster decision instead of weeks of internal back and forth. And did you notice how I phrase it as a question? It conveys that it's actually their idea and they're the owner of this process in a way. Really powerful in terms of buy in. And the key insight here is that authority isn't just about identifying who makes decisions, it's about orchestrating a process that gets everyone aligned as quickly as possible. Okay, now in sales, we're certainly going to face objections, right? And that's fine. A lot of founders are scared of objections, but I kind of love them. I love them because I know that objections really aren't roadblocks, they're invitations for me to have the real conversation behind the conversation. Every objection I found falls into one of four categories. And once you know which category you're dealing with, you know exactly how to respond. So, category one is skepticism. I'm just not sure if this will work for us. Category two is stalling. I need to think about this. Category three is financial. It's just too expensive. And category 4 is I need to discuss this with my team. Any of these sound familiar? So here's the framework for how we'll bust each of these. For the skepticism one, use the feel, felt, found method. You say something like, hey, I understand how you feel. Other CEOs in your industries felt the same way when they first heard about this approach. What they found was that once they implemented it, their customer acquisition costs dropped by 40% in the first quarter. What specific part are you most skeptical about? And for stalling, use the what specifically drill down. Hey, I totally understand you wanting to think about it. What specifically do you need to think about? Is it the timeline, the implementation, or something else? I don't always give them those three options or any three options, but it may be helpful in kind of sussing out the real underlying concern. You just have to feel this out in the sales call. Either way, keep drilling down until you get the real objection. Because I need to think about it is never the real objection. To me, it's what people say when they don't want to tell you the real reason that they're hesitating. And for the financial objection, I like to use the cost versus investment reframe. You say, hey, I hear you saying it's expensive. Help me understand compared to what? Because when I look at the numbers, this pays for itself in 90 days. Are you saying the ROI doesn't make sense or that you don't have cash flow right now? And this separates people who don't see value from your solution to people who genuinely can't afford it. And for authority, I use the stakeholder preparation approach. You say, hey, totally makes sense. I know you have to run this by your team. What questions do you think that they'll have? Let's make sure you're prepared to address their concerns so that you all can get to a decision quickly. But I got to be real here. The only thing better than overcoming objections is preventing objections before they ever happen. And founders I work with who are really driving excellent founder-led sales in their organizations do this by addressing concerns throughout their presentation or their pitch or their demo. And they'll say things like, hey, now you might be thinking this sounds too good to be true. And really, I thought the same when first seeing these results, but let me show you exactly how this works. Or, I know you're wondering, what if that doesn't work for our industry? And that's exactly what John over at ABC Corp asked me. And here's what happened when they implemented our system. You see how by addressing objections before they're raised, we're really removing the obstacle before they become roadblocks. And this is really important in a 1 or 2 close call situation where time can be of the essence. And now after you've handled all of their objections, you use this exact phrase. Now that we've covered that, is there anything else you need to see before we move forward? And you sit there. And if they say no, you close. Great. When would you like to get started? If they give you another objection, you handle it the same way using the same framework as we talked about before. And you keep going until there are no more objections left. And then you close. And the key is to remember that objections are just a request for more information. Give them the information they need and objections disappear. Now, remember that sales call planning worksheet I mentioned? It includes a complete objection handling cheat sheet with responses to the 15 or so most common objections in sales. You can grab it in the link in the description below, and it's like having me as a sales coach in your back pocket. Okay, just to recap, here's what we've covered. How to build authority-based rapport that positions you as an expert and not just another vendor. The pain escalation method that turns surface-level problems into really urgent needs. Budget Aikido that qualifies prospects without being pushy. The authority sphere that maps out the path to real decision makers, and objection reframing that turns resistance into deeper conversations. And look, I promise if you implement these frameworks, you'll close more deals in the next 30 days than most people close in a year. But here's my challenge for you. Don't just watch this video and do nothing. Take at least one of these and use it in your very next sales call, because information without implementation is just entertainment. And I'm not here for entertainment. I'm here to help you win. Grab the Sales Call Planning Worksheet in the link in the description below. It breaks down everything we've covered into a step-by-step checklist you can use immediately in your next sales call. And if this helped, check out this video over here where I walk through the entire sales process I run at my SaaS company that's resulted in more than $10 million in sales. You won't want to miss it.